Alright everyone, now we've got a very interesting story. There's a link in the description, not archived of course. I'm just simply laughing at Politico right now. They got caught out having taken USAID money. They then unwisely decided to gaslight people and try to claim that they didn't take USAID money. But they did. And it's provable. We've got the documentation. It's been established that they actually did. This surprises nobody, by the way. I would be exceptionally surprised if the Biden administration hadn't given USAID money to other propaganda networks as well. And this was all facilitated by none other than Barack Hussein Obama. Barack Obama ended a long-standing rule with regards to the U.S. government engaging in domestic propaganda. We discussed this on the Quartercast actually the other day. What happened is that originally the U.S. government wasn't allowed to disperse funds or even really lean on the ear of domestic networks in order to create domestic coverage. He decided that that was not really in keeping with his ideology because he's a fucking commie, and so he scrapped that unilaterally. I noticed that the courts didn't intercede on that account. A little bit different from what we're seeing right now. And so then domestic propaganda began. It therefore never surprised me when the Twitter files came out. It didn't surprise me when Zuckerberg himself, and he's no libertarian, so to speak, he's definitely a unipartyist, he comes out and says, yeah, the U.S. government was pressuring me. This didn't surprise me in the least. It would surprise me if other missing link media networks, maybe Vox, maybe Salon, maybe HuffPo, maybe The Blaze, maybe Rolling Stone, who fucking knows, weren't pressured similarly and potentially dispersed money in order to make government state propaganda. The fact is that Politico is lying to people. They took U.S. money. They absolutely did. They're mincing their words in their response, their rebuttal, for a reason. The fact is that they took the money, and then they made the content. This isn't surprising. Again, the Biden administration needed mouthpieces to actually do its bidding, to try to prop it up. And this is what happened the entire time. Now, mostly it was individual influencers, individual astroturfed influencers. People like Harry Sisson, people like Dash Dabrowski, Vaush, people like that. Normally it was people that simply were easily bought off, and they could astroturf them. So they had a Brooklyn Dad Defiant. They had an artificial audience. That's why their engagement levels were so low for so long. And the engagement that is there was largely botted, and it had nothing to do with organic engagement at all. But they also targeted the missing link media, and I think I know why. The legacy media was already on board with the Biden administration. Virtually all of them. Other than Fox News, pretty much the entire legacy media was already on board. You don't need to pay them off. You don't need to pay the New York Times to make fluff pieces about Kamala Harris because they're already going to do that anyway. They know their audience. Missing link media, I think, is what they mainly targeted, though. It was even beyond the individual influencers in some cases. We now know that Politico was one of them. I suspect that we'll find that other missing link media outlets probably followed suit. I don't think that this is the last domino to fall. I think that they were doing this habitually because they were trying to prop up a dying administration run by a geriatric old fool and a psychopath which nobody really organically liked. So if your administration is literally falling into tatters, what do? You take taxpayer money and you pay certain groups, which are mincing words for legal reasons right now. There's a reason why the wording of this particular post from Politico is the way that it is. You give them money. You're not telling them that they have to support the administration. That's not what you're doing. You're not telling PBS NewsHour, hey, you have to do a fluff interview with Joe Biden or something like that. That's not what you're doing. You're simply handing them money. And they're taking it because they love money. Since you're giving them money, there's a tacit understanding that they're going to generally support you. That's the way that it works. It's like, let's say, I give you $1 million. Are you likely to criticize me? No, of course not. You're very unlikely to do that because you want another $1 million down the road. I've given you a solid, you're doing me a solid. Reciprocity doesn't always have to be on paper. This is the way that hominids work. And these people are a bunch of hominids. They're apes. Human beings are nothing more than more mentally advanced versions of orangutans, as it were. And so they operate in the same general capacity. If you have an organization, therefore, that has any influence at all, you can get money, and it's given freely. You don't have to do anything. But the money is cut off if you don't. That's the understanding, because people are intelligent enough to understand how that fucking works. It's a mafioso mentality more than anything else. So what happened is that the Biden administration made use of the Obama-era deruling with regards to domestic propaganda to spew out domestic propaganda. But it did it intelligently. This means that Joe Biden himself probably wasn't even involved with the decision-making process because he can't even change his own fucking socks. His staff and the people that were actually in charge during that 4-year period were the ones making that decision. Throw money at this media outlet, and you will tend to get more favorable coverage. That's what happened. You're effectively money laundering, by the way. I mean, technically speaking, what they did was probably illegal. It's just they can get away with it because they happen to be the administration at the time, and because the Republicans are too fickle to do anything about it. You think they're going to do jack shit? Fucking cry me a river, my dude. Yeah, it's raining in the Sahara. Probably not going to happen. But what they did was domestic propaganda, and this was facilitated by the Obama administration, initially at least. And I don't think that Biden himself probably even knew that this was going on. I highly doubt that they even appraised him of this. It's almost like you've got a shadow government, and you have for some time, I'll explain in a moment, which is actually operating everything. And the chief executive's role has been diminished to the point of symbolic. It's sort of like when the Syrian envoy was openly lying to Donald Trump about troop totals in Syria. This was done openly. To my knowledge, he was never punished for having done so. It appears that people behind the scenes were effectively calling the shots under Joe Biden, and he was never actually appraised of some of the things that were going on. Wasn't given, they simply, it was a lie by omission, effectively. They simply never told him it was happening. I don't even know that Joe Biden would have green-lighted such a thing. And I'm a frequent critic of Joe Biden. You may have noticed this. Even I have to give him credit. He probably just didn't fucking know. Because what would be the point of telling him? He would forget 3 minutes later. That's about all. Peace out.